Hi there. Welcome to A Creative Affair, a collection of conversations exploring creativity through the art of photography and other creative passions, of course. I'm Len. I've been teaching professionally my whole adult life, and just over 10 years ago I left a full-time position teaching outdoor guides and started teaching photography full-time. And it turned out that that was a defining moment in my life for me. I actually hoped it would have been when I opened an art gallery, but no, it actually was when I combined photography and teaching together that my whole life fell into place. And it's really important because when I teach and when I create photography is when I go into a flow state, when I just totally get lost into the world. I find that absolutely fascinating.
That is fascinating. I'm Brie. I'm a life coach for creatives and a photographer. And one of my favorite artistic inspirations is the painter Georgia O'Keeffe. So if you know nothing about her, go look her up. I'll put a link to her work in the show notes. I just love her soft color palette, but paired with very bold subjects. And I can't wait to go to her museum one of these days in New Mexico. I'm going to do it. And you know what's interesting? You and I, Len, we were talking about our artists that have influenced us. And I was thinking about it and found an image from her. And I really think subconsciously she has heavily influenced who I am as a photographer. And through this photographic journey, I feel like I've been developing this, I call it a photographer's eye. Do we call it that?
We can.
Meaning,
we call it
right?
whatever we like, don't we?
Right. Yeah. Well, so I'm calling it that. But it means I notice the world around me in such a different way now. And I'm seeing light and movement and colors and shapes in ways I never have before. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing. And I think all of that together has influenced my personal experience of making images. And the experience of it is probably sometimes I'm in flow. And that's what we're talking about today. Flow. So let's go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, honestly, Brie, I'd like to talk to you for an hour about Georgia O'Keeffe. And I think her work is absolutely amazing. And then, of course, photographers should know that she's tied in with photography because of who Stiglitz was, and then there's beautiful photographs of her floating around as well, and she actually took photographs too. Like, we could spend all day just talking about Georgia, and then we could also get into her eroticism, and I'm sure there's lots of flirting moments to be had there too.
It is called A Creative Affair, and wait till y'all hear what we have coming next season. And we're laughing because we know, and we're not going to reveal it yet. So
we're so excited that there is going to be a next season, and that we're
yes, there is.
It's unfolding.
It's going to be so fun. Well, Len, what is flow? What is flow state? What is that? I mean, I think people hear it. Maybe if you've never heard of it, now you can understand, hopefully we can shed some light on it. But also, maybe you've heard of it before, but not really understood what in the world this flow state really is. So what's your definition?
But before we get to a definition, I really find it fascinating how the idea of it came about, and that was when he was exploring. Do you know how to pronounce his name?
Yes. I looked it up. Okay, so what we're talking about is a book called Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Thank you. I can't do that, and I seriously can't actually pronounce his name. And
we'll put
my dyslexia
we'll
and apologies. My sincerest apologies for my inability.
And listen, I had to, I'll put a link in the show notes, but because it's so difficult to pronounce because of the spelling, I had to look it up on YouTube. So, and there are people that say how to do it. So anyway, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. There you go.
That's fantastic. So he was researching what is happiness. And it's that really trying to define what is actually happiness. And in his research, he really started to narrow down what state someone is when they are in a state of happiness. And he called that state flow. And I find that as a basis of defining what flow is that he was actually looking for what is happiness. Now, I think what he described as flow can be found in other ways and doesn't necessarily need to be happiness. But what's emerged from that study is an understanding and an exploration of a thing called a flow state. And it's the state of mind that we go into when we're doing certain things, fascinatingly.
I love that you explained kind of the backstory of it. And I have to admit, he did a TED Talk, which I'll also link in the show notes, about it, and explains some of his backstory behind it and, his the beginning of his research. And we are not going to talk all about him, but we will be interjecting a lot from the book because it's so I think, and we don't really know where this conversation is going to go, but it's like the book is so in depth and he explains it so well, all these different facets. But to me, what I really love is that he initially says flow is called the optimal experience. And when I think about that, I just think, oh, this is and for sure it can be happiness. But it's this state that, and I've experienced this before, and I know you have too, Len, the state that I'm in where wherever we are at is like the peak of our experience, or it can be peaking, right, of experience in that one particular genre or activity. So, and it can be in photography, it can be in art, it could be in work, it could be in sex, it could be in, all kinds of, different things that you experience in life. You can experience this state of flow. And I have more to say about that, but so I'll read one of the definitions just so I'm not rambling so much. But he says, flow is the way people describe their state of mind when consciousness is harmoniously ordered and they want to pursue whatever they're doing for its own sake. Not for like money, not for fame. It has to be this intrinsic motivation just for the sake of doing it. And that is what's so interesting about this state, is that we're pursuing it just for the experience of doing it.
It's really exciting for us as artists, isn't it, to be talking about what state we're in when we're making art. And I think this is the reason why this is something that we're going to discuss today, is we really want to spend time talking about what state, or how do we get into this mind state where we produce really beautiful art. And flow, for me, when I discovered it, was very much a key element that fitted into the puzzle that helped me understand. And I go into this state where I let go, and all my other thoughts disappear. So I'm not worried about my bank balance or my conversations with other people, or what I have to do tomorrow. I'm actually totally 100% focused on creating my art and then I have to have this connection with the subject. I have to have the connection with my art that I'm making, and when it goes and comes together, I'm in another whole world. I'm off on a different planet, and by listening and reading about what the flow state is, I suddenly have a deeper understanding of where I'm trying to get to when I want to become more productive with my art. I hope that makes sense there.
Oh, yeah. And I'm curious for you, because I was actually thinking about this question. I was wondering, by achieving this flow state, does it necessarily mean that our work is more beautiful, or more, that we're creating something amazing when we're in the flow state? Or is it, like, for me, I'm thinking about it and I'm like, well, I don't know that I'm creating necessarily anything amazing when I'm in the flow state, but for sure, being in I can tell Len's smiling right now. He has things to say about this, but being in this state, for me, it's so enjoyable because it's just like I could spend, and I can talk about this experience later. I've spent hours in this state and just creating, and the act of creating is just so enjoyable that I'm like, oh, I want to do this again. Not even because I produced anything. So what about you? Like, do you like expect that you're going to create something beautiful?
Totally agree. And I've been laughing and smiling because, well, it ties back to happiness, isn't it? It's when we're in this state of flow and we let go of other things, it actually means that we're in the moment, isn't it? We're really centered and actually doing something that's chewing up our brain and engaging us in an absolute meaningful way. And of course, I go into a flow state without making anything good. And that doesn't matter. It's not always about making product. It's about the enjoyable journey that we're on as artists, making art all the time rather than product. I think we can get really caught up on product because we're supposed to be doing something and our work is supposed to be meaningful and it has to be beautiful every time we take a photograph. But for me, part of my life lesson, and I'm sure it's taken me many, many years to get to this point, that just being out and doing what I love is more important than making something beautiful. So, of course, I don't make beautiful things when I'm in this state. But I can honestly tell you, Brie, I'm addicted to it. I really love, and it's what I want, is to be in that state. And it's something that I chase through my art, is trying to get to that place of being in flow.
I'm going to tell you why you're addicted to it, Len.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Well, one of the interesting things, and this is from all of this is backed up by information that I've gleaned from, of course, the internet. Where else? But it is this amazingly rewarding experience that we want to continue to have, because when we do experience it, our brains produce chemicals. So here they are. I won't be able to pronounce them all. Norepinephrine, anandamide. I'm sorry. Serotonin, I know how to say that. Dopamine and endorphins. So I'm sorry I messed up those first ones, but listen to all of those like chemicals. It's because we have this amazing chemical release that makes us feel so good. And what's awesome, what I love about flow is, and the reason I think it's called flow is it's because our all of the things that we're doing, like our actions and all of the things that we're thinking, our awareness, those have totally merged. And it just feels like our brain and our body are one, like continuous, they're one. And we know exactly what to do next, the next steps. We don't have to, we may be working on something, right? Then part of it may be challenging, but it comes, it feels kind of easy. It doesn't feel really difficult, even if we're being challenged. So, a couple things I want to say about flow that I love is we lose our sense of time. We just kind of, I've done this for hours, right? We're not worried about failing. Our personal self-consciousness, like I've experienced this. I'm like, I don't care who's around me or what I'm doing. And all of that kind of falls away. And it's just me and the creation, the doing of whatever activity I'm in. It's full concentration. It's awesome.
It's also a moment when our subconscious can communicate clearly with our consciousness, I think, and it's something I don't really understand very much of, but I find that my art works when I'm relaxed and I'm able to really feel myself. And so being in a state of flow takes away all those nagging thoughts, helps me being really particularly concentrated, but it really happens when I'm actually able to listen and feel. And so when I'm making art, I'm actually feeling the art as well as doing it consciously. And of course, there's compositional decisions and technical decisions being made as I'm making my art, but there's also this fine-tuning into feeling so that, that feels right, that doesn't feel right, or I'm attracted to go over here, or there's something happening over here. And it's so immersive, as you say, the whole world disappears. The time disappears on us, and it can happen anywhere. Like for me, it's happened going into a dark room, and I shut the door and I come out at 3:00 in the morning. And I've been in there for 8 hours, totally obsessed with making a photographic print. Or maybe it's happened in the wilds of South Africa on the Namibia border at Kookaboom Cliff on a photographic shoot where I'm the light and being immersed in photography for a few weeks. I have such an immersive experience, and the chemicals that get released are so crazily high. I'm almost totally stoned off my face on my own chemicals.
I would
absolutely
love to see
amazing
that.
Experience.
Well, and that's one reason that we want to be in this, because it is this like physical experience and this really emotional experience. And yeah, I'm trying to remember all of the things. I'm trying to remember all of the things that you just said that were so just beautiful. I was also thinking one of the reasons that it's so nice to be in that state is because we've dropped all of the stress and the worry and we're allowing ourselves just to do the pure creating. And maybe that's what I was going to say, is that we're allowing ourselves to connect with our subconscious, because we're not when we're worried about something, or we're thinking about something and our brain is in the background, it's like chewing on it and worrying about it. I've had that before a lot. Even right now, I'm making this podcast with you, but I'm preparing for a trip. I got a couple things. My brain in the background has all those little things that's talking to me. But I'm sorry, I'm not in the flow state right now, Len. I need some chemicals. But when we drop all of it and be purely focused. That is maybe one of the reasons. Hi, Momo, the dog. I think that's one of the main reasons that we can tap into that subconscious level, because we don't have any of those things. Our brain isn't busy doing that. It's just a thought from me. We can't prove any of that. No,
I totally believe in that, and it just doesn't happen for me. And I'm not talking for other people here, but instantaneously, there has to be a build up. For me, I'm so in my head. I'm sorry about that, but I get so caught up in my own headspace that it gets in the way. And it actually is hard work to get to that place. I was only away last week and on a trip with a group of photographers teaching abstract photography. And being immersed, my work went from, very, very average to blossoming over that particular period of time. So what's happening is I'm actually working my way over a period of days to get to this flow state where I can actually let go of all the other things in my life and actually be totally present with my work. And then knowing that it takes me that amount of time to get there, I now actually build into my schedule a few extra days to stay there and stay in it and to keep working. And then I reach out I love working with other people too, and I reach out and say, hey, why don't you stay around and we'll just go out and take photographs. No pressure, no performance. Let's just, while we're in this, we have access to this state because we've worked all week to get there. Why don't we continue in it for a little bit longer? So for me, it's I wish I could just switch into it much more easily, but I can't. I have to actually work very, very hard to let go of my consciousness because it gets in the way. It blocks me up. It distracts me. Leads me down a different garden path.
Yeah, same here. And you know what's funny about flow is, and one thing that I'm understanding by reading the book, and I think that's true, is it can't be forced in any way. And so I think that there's ways that we can set ourselves up, like you have, to experience it. That I love that you build on the end of your trip, some time for yourself to have that, and to, now that you're relaxed and you've been in your art and you've been with other people, and we're both social, so we get our, I don't know, do you get your energy from other people?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of keeps me going. It keeps me going.
Yes, exactly.
It's exhausting.
Some people, right. But for some people, if you're with a lot of people and it's exhausting for you, that might not be the right time for you is afterwards. The right time might be to get there early and immerse yourself and allow yourself to have alone time, so that, like, if you run a workshop, then then when the people arrive, then you've already experienced it and you're relaxed and you're ready. And this is, of course, kind of just for photographers, but it could be anyone running any kind of, artistic workshop. So there are ways that you can be creative in how to put yourself in a space where you are consciously relaxing and setting aside some of the stress. And because, honestly, when we're creating our art, there's really nothing that we can do about the bills that have to get paid. So, right? If we're deciding that we're going to spend a half a day, a whole day on our work, then we're not deciding to pay the bills. We're not deciding to, do all these other things. And so maybe we can just let ourselves not have to worry about them because they don't. It's not something that we're doing, that we've decided to do right then. So I think as artists and creatives, we can be creative in that way, is to figure out how to set ourselves up. So any other ways you set yourself up to kind of put yourself in that state?
One of the ones that you just mentioned there is that, and if we're worrying about our bills, one of the answers is go and just deal with them. Like, get rid of them, clear the table, tidy the office, tidy the studio, empty your emails, go and pay the bill, go and write that email that you have to write, or that piece of work that you need to finish. Like, clearing the slate is one way for me to get there. But it's interesting. I had another lovely conversation with a very dear mate of mine, Evan, and we were talking about his creativity, and he was telling me that as he practiced being more present in his life and actually actively practice being present, his creativity went off the scale. And being present, and I said, well, come on, you tell me your secret to being present. Well, he said he started practicing with just brushing his teeth. And the beautiful story unfolds of while you're brushing your teeth, just to feel and to concentrate on that very action, to feel it, to have and to shut out all the other things, and just to be very present. So as he practices being present, his creativity just goes nuts. And by practicing it with one tiny thing, he can then extend that over and over and out into other things into his life. And to me, getting to a flow state is actually about getting to be more present with my art and who I am and what I'm doing at that very time.
That's really amazing. That's really beautiful. I really appreciate that that idea, and that is. So to go back to, if we go back to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, one of the things. So he talks in his TED Talk and in the book. There are 7 conditions of flow. And intense focus. I have a whole list of 7, which I'll put in the notes too. But the first one is intense focus, and I think that is being very actively present when you're just hyper focused on your one activity. And it's not even just total focus, right? This is a complete. Almost like a hyper awareness of, like, if you took your toothbrush, right, where are the bristles going? The actions of your hand. Because so many things that we do are just, we've trained ourselves
to be routine, haven't we?
Yeah, to not even think about them. And for sure, when we're entering this flow state, we do want a good portion of what we do to be sort of the routine. Like for me, I want to know all the technicals of working my camera. But when we already know let's say the proper way to brush our teeth, and we already know how to do that, then we can focus on some other parts of it. So like in photography, if we already, or any of our art, if we already know have all the technical stuff worked out, and we just can do it so easily, then there's so much more that we can focus on, because we're not tripped up. So the idea is we have this balance between skill level and challenge level, and you want both of them to be very high to get into this flow state. So you want to be able to have a lot of skills, so that you're not messing around with all the details, but also you want something to be really challenging at the same time, so that you can be very hyper-focused. Otherwise, you get bored.
And I had a lovely conversation with my son only a few weeks ago, and he was arguing. He wants to be a lawyer, and debating is one of his things at the moment. And he loves to argue with me and discuss the point. But his argument
How's that working out? How's that working out for him?
Very well, actually.
Okay, good.
Very, very well. he's growing up too quickly. Anyway, his argument was, Len, Dad, I really love to learn, and I actually go in to this beautiful flow state in learning. And so he sees learning as a skill and as a challenge in itself. And I find that a absolutely fascinating thing, because part of the problem, as we're talking about, is, are we obsessed and thinking about how to do something, and it's getting in the way with actually being the creative side of things, and getting the skill ratio to challenge working for us is quite hard. And I know with my students, focusing people into projects where they're actually are working on something that they love that's quite defined helps remove some of the challenges of having not enough knowledge. And so by removing all the other possibilities and focusing in, then they can really target their learning specifically down to just the challenges that they're facing right at this time. And it can be a learning thing going into flow, and it can also be something that when we're very, very skilled, we can go into this. So our level of knowledge can be varied. But the important point that he makes here, that there's challenge, isn't there? And I think one of the things that we love about art, not only is it its addictive nature, because it we go into this flow state and all these chemicals are produced, but also that it has a high degree of challenge about it, that we're always wrestling with this question about what is beauty. That's one I wrestle with, and what makes a satisfactory artwork for us. So that is part of the challenge that we're balancing, that we're wrestling with in our mind and trying to feel the answer and consciously solve it, that actually keeps us in the flow state. And I think that's part of our addiction and returning to it, because the challenge of making art that is satisfactory can feel so high.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words. I think, and it doesn't matter, I agree with you, it doesn't matter necessarily on our skill level. It's finding something that's challenging to meet that, so that we can have these good experiences. Because if our skill level, I think I said this before, if it's higher than what we're challenging ourselves with, we're going to get bored. So if you find yourself bored creating your art, in your art, then this is a good cue to then say, well, what more could I be doing? Get your brain going. What more could you be challenging yourself with? Because the reason you're bored is because you're not challenged enough. And you want to put yourself into that space where you are doing that, where you're learning and pushing yourself, because that's when it's the most fun. That's what he's saying. Even if we're working, like I have to tell you, I played flute in college, and there are days where I would practice for hours and I was sweating and working, because it's a whole full body physical experience if you're playing your instrument correctly. And so,
yes.
Right? It is. But that's the key, is that you want to be challenging yourself, and that hence the sweat. and sometimes I would be so exhausted. I mean, having a good time doing our art doesn't mean that we're not tired when we're done. It just means that when we're experiencing the flow, we don't even notice any of it. And so I remember having these hours of practicing, and apparently I didn't have children then bothering me, but I would have these hours of practice where I could be in this state. Now, I'm not talking this every time, but I could be in this state really enjoying the work part. This doesn't come when we're leisurely, kind of casually doing things. In fact, what's interesting, Let me say one more thing, Len. One of the interesting things that I understand from now reading this book is we experience flow so much more when we're actually working versus like leisure and, doing things that are like more relaxing because we're pushing ourselves. Okay, go ahead.
There's so many. Leisure is part of the part of that game too, isn't it? I really love sailing and rock climbing, and I also love bushwalking, and I go into flow state in those activities as well because I actually have to concentrate to continue doing them, and that's part of it. And each of them works differently. So walking is so different to something like climbing, where your focus is so sharply done. One of the things that he says is that we need this inner clarity, and I want to come back to your flute and practicing. And of course into our art, is that as you're practicing, you actually have a goal that you're trying to work towards, and that you have an inner sense of being able to measure how close you are to it. And practicing is bringing you closer to it, and you can feel that if I keep doing this, I can get this right, and I've got it right just now, and it's going now, and then I just lost it actually, and I lost it because of this happened, and if I work on that little bit, and I go back and start here again, I can actually iron that problem out. And I think we do that as artists. We have a sense of idea about something, and we start playing with it and experimenting about it. And one of his points also is that we're not scared to make mistakes, is it? And that we're experimenting and taking risks and trying different things on this journey to solve our problem, or to create something. As an artist, our problem to solve is to create something that is meaningful to us and perhaps meaningful to other people. And when you're practicing the flute, you actually have this ability, because of your skill level, to measure where you are up to in that process. And that's what also keeps you engaged, isn't it? That measuring to yourself.
Yes. I think, when I was first starting out playing the flute, you wouldn't know. But having the skill level to be able to do this on your own, like at this flow state didn't happen for me when I was in a lesson, or even maybe sometimes when you're with a group. But for me, it's always when I'm alone experiencing this, because it's so much easier not to have the distractions, and it's almost like I'm having this like inner dialogue with myself, and you're able to really, I love this like idea of inner clarity, because you're really talking with your brain, and you're having these almost these like aha moments too, and when things feel right. It's like your whole body goes, yes, that was right. Yes, that was right. and that to me is like, I love that part of this experience, is having that feeling of, yes, I love this part, and it's exactly what I want to be doing. This is exactly what I came here to do, even though I didn't even know what I was setting out to do when I started it. So that to me is like this weird part about it. The clarity.
Does it happen with other people? And you said that it doesn't for you in music. And when I learnt music, unfortunately I learnt alone and with a teacher. But I learnt to perform in solo, and it was always very, very difficult for me to play with other people. And I actually used to teach musicians how to work together as teams for a job. And that was an interesting part of my life. And when a band is performing at a really high level, they're all in a flow state. that, and that's what they're chasing as well. And it's actually a team work thing, and then the flow comes together with lots of people involved in it, and I find that really, really exciting. And that's what I was alluding to when I'm running a workshop. As the leader, I'm also in control of trying to help other people get to that state and trying to maintain it and help people get that focused on that work. And I know you're a teacher too, Brie. When we're working with people, we're actually trying to help them clear the decks and find out what it is to become focused enough so that they can actually get into this flow state themselves, don't we? That's part of our goal, is to problem solve out to get them in to flow so that they can actually produce something meaningful to them that's very, very important.
Yeah, and I think we do that in different ways. And I maybe have experienced the flow with a group, like if I was doing a duet with someone and we were just, I can't think of a time where it was really going very well and everything dropped away and, oh, have we been practicing for hours now? That kind of a thing. But rarely. For me, it's a solo activity, but so many people. The amazing thing about this is it can come in so many different varieties. You just figure out where it works for you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that is very, very important in his work. Is he's not. It ends up in creativity because his second book is actually on creativity, but originally it was from this happiness perspective, and then it's this exploration of a state, and we can get it anywhere. It can be anything where we're totally immersed in it, and we want to keep doing it, and it's transferable, isn't it? So we can freely talk about the flow state for playing a flute and creating art, or for me, teaching a group of people. I go into a flow state in that process as well. And one of the key elements that he talks about here is that intrinsic motivation, that we want to do this and we want to perform really well. And that's actually also driving our intense focus, is our obsession with our own performance, with what we're doing.
With our passions?
Yes.
Yeah, doing our art or whatever it is that we're challenging ourselves to do purely for the doing of it. That's where it has to come from. That's when you're going to find the most enjoyment of it. And I think that's definitely why, he brings up intrinsic motivation as one of the key elements, because if you are getting together and saying, okay, we're going to create this and we're going to be doing it so we can make $100,000. I mean, who knows if that's any, real money to anybody, but, or any kind of amount of money, it has a different feeling to it. And for sure, you can create something from intrinsic motivation that can make you money. But if you're just doing the thing to make the money, then you don't necessarily, he's saying that's not a driver to enter this flow state. Now, I'm not saying it's a problem to do something just to make money, but if you want to have the optimal enjoyment and the optimal experience of being in this state, then you're doing it for the pure love of it and not because you're motivated by something else. Another one that he talks about is, he says it's an alternative reality. So you're not like just washing dishes. You're not, driving to the grocery store or doing any of those mundane things around. This is like something special. And I can think of a time for me that I had this flow state, and I'm a newer photographer. And I say that in quotes because what does that even mean? so I haven't experienced it in my photography very often, but in one in particular, I remember focusing so much on these rocks. You guys all know I love rocks and all the patterns. It was almost an out of body experience. I was not even in a real real place, because it was just me and these like crazy rock patterns that are so out of my normal life that so I was able to enter flow because it was outside of that norm.
So you were totally in flow because your chemicals were just pumping out through your body, weren't they? And that's what it felt like. You were in an alternative reality. And, it's actually really hard to describe because you were so focused on it. You can reflect back on it and try to... out of body's a really good way of looking at it because we're trying to describe something that we weren't conscious of at the time.
Right. It's when you're done, you don't even know that you're in this state until after you finish and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I think this is just what just happened. Right. And what's interesting about being in this state is sometimes you feel like time's going really fast and sometimes it's very slow and my thoughts are coming very slow and I'm thinking about very tiny things, and even when I'm, there's you had said earlier that there's compositional things that you're working out, and I'm like talking like very, very minute camera shifts even, because it's just it was my subconscious going, if you shift it to the right 1 centimeter, this whole thing changes, right? So it is a very unique experience, and we're hoping by discussing this and our excitement, enthusiasm for experiencing this, we hope that all of you are able to put yourselves in a place where you can also experience it in your art or, even any work that you do.
I have a question for you, Brie. And I think ones we should discuss. If we discover we've been in it afterwards, surely there are things we can do to help set up ourselves so that we go into it more easily. And like we talked earlier about clearing the decks and all those sort of obvious ones. But what other things can you think of that we can actually do to help set ourselves up to go into the flow state and to get there more quickly? Do you have any hints for me?
Well, so I'm looking at, there's 7 conditions of flow. So if I'm looking at all of these different ones and going, okay, if I'm going to be in flow state, there's all of these different conditions, and how can I set myself up to experience each one? So you talked about, and maybe we can just talk about each one, and maybe we have some ideas surrounding each one. This isn't something I've planned, but this is how I like to approach problem solving, is going, okay, this is where I want to be. How can I set myself up to get there? So intense focus. I love that you talked about the toothbrush thing. I think that's a really great way to practice having intense focus, right?
Well, it's also a way to practice clearing the mind. And so the real part of that exercise is actually feeling and removing all those other thoughts and concentrating in with that intense focus, with that inner clarity, isn't it, as well? It
can do a lot.
I think they're trying to achieve a flow state in brushing their teeth. And a Buddhist would argue that, I'm sure, that you can get it anywhere and with anything that you absolutely do in life.
Yeah, if you're absolutely present with everything that you do.
Yes, it's an exercise in presence.
Right. And what's interesting is the next one is an alternative reality. So you want to put yourself in a place where you're maybe, and we talked about doing anything at any time, but the flow experience can happen when you put yourself doing something that's out of your normal. So put yourself doing something that's out of your normal, that's out of maybe your routine. And I'm going to jumble these around.
That's one of the reasons I love to travel and make art, because it takes me outside of my normal routine and takes me to somewhere new. And in that new place, I can find stimulation, and also I can leave other parts of my life behind. So there's multiple parts going on with being away from home, from where I'm normally doing stuff, and doing it somewhere different.
And I find when I travel, I need to make sure that I have, if I want to be doing that, having that experience, I need time in the place to just be there and experience it, and have it be even a little bit more familiar. So I didn't experience flow with these set of rocks until I had visited that place at least 3 different times. And then when I came there, I did it almost on purpose. I was like, I'm going to stay in these 50 meters, 100 meters. And I was there for hours in this space. So that's one of the next ones, is timelessness. You may decide, maybe in order to achieve this flow, we don't give ourselves a time limit. We open up our schedule so that we don't have the time worry. This is like part of the clearing, is take away the concern about how long this is going to take. Because if you have this running in the back of your mind, I only have 30 minutes, how can I quickly get in the flow state? It's never going to happen. You cannot be conscious that it's going to happen. So taking away some of the time, and that's why we can't always do this. When you were in the dark room, Len, for sure, sleep would have called you eventually, right? But you didn't have like a deadline. I have to be, somewhere at some time. You were like, I'm going to go in the dark room.
Yeah.
And I'll come out when I'm done. So often
we worry about, I've got to get up tomorrow and do this, and I've got to have a good night's sleep and those sort of things. And it actually stops us pursuing something at that very moment. One of the things that drew you back, it wasn't just the act of revisiting it 3 or 4 times about these rocks, that you were kept getting drawn to them, weren't you? That there was something about them and a feeling that like, and you kept noticing, and then you wanted to go again, and then you like, okay, I can really feel that they're talking to me. I really need to go back there and just give them that energy for that to happen. And so you were setting yourself up over a period of time, and hopefully you hit that flow state when you were there. Right. And I didn't actually know that's what it was. I didn't know anything about it at that point. But for sure, I had all of the right ingredients. And one of them is this intrinsic motivation. I was just going there to spend time with the rocks because I was so interested in it personally. And I had no idea what I was going to do with it. And there's a lot of them are still in my collection. But I totally enjoyed the experience for the pure enjoyment of it. And it was at a point, talking about, let's go back to the skill challenge ratio. It was at a point where I knew enough about photography that I didn't have to worry about all of the little tiny details, like a lot of the technical things. I was making, it was more rote memory, muscle memory, to be able to just work my camera really easily and know, and be thinking, I'd like to move a centimeter, know exactly how to do that. I'll just move this, right? And so I had enough experience that it wasn't clunky. Things could just flow. Beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And part of my question was definitely a leading question. We can set ourselves up for it, but we can't predict that it's going to happen. We can try. We can keep doing things to trigger ourselves. And I just want to share one other story I only just discovered last night or yesterday. I was doing a presentation on David Hockney, and I discovered that every morning in bed, he draws a flower and sends it to his friends in bed. And I was sort of thinking about how beautiful that was on so many different levels. Like, one, it's romantic and it's so loving and caring. And then I was also thinking how it probably is a trigger for him each morning to start him off into a creative mode. And if we can find these little things, and maybe they're habits. I know, sports people might even have a tiny little routine or words that they say themselves, or a particular movement they do before they do something to help center themselves before they actually do their performance. And as artists, we need to find those triggers as well that can actually help us get there. And I know for me, one of the biggest ones is actually time practicing. And it's one of his points about being in flow, isn't it? Is that we have no fear of worry or fear of failure, that we actually see ourselves as practicing, experimenting, searching, exploring, trying to find these answers. And I know for me that answer can take weeks to come, not just minutes or seconds. And I have to give myself permission to be present over a long period of time and to keep working at it. And then finally, the flow state turns up when I'm least expecting it, because everything else comes into line. Not only am I in flow state, but the light's beautiful, the tree's magic, the place is there. I do have that spare time, and I can just totally become immersed. And then afterwards, I sort of step out of this alternative reality and realize, hey, I was just in flow. And then the most beautiful thing happens, Brie, is that when I look at the work, oh my God, it's beautiful. And that's why it's addictive, is because the quality of the work also matches being in this flow state rather than when I force it. So I'm sorry, that's a bit of a long rave there, but
no, it's kind
it
of
all
like
just came out.
Well, it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is it's kind of a chicken and the egg, which came first thing was, is flow state conducive to making beautiful work, or is the work beautiful because we were in flow? And so I think that's a question only we can answer for ourselves. But I feel like it's probably that second one. It's beautiful because of our experience. And we know we're so emotionally tied to our work. We just are. It comes from within us. It's this unique, all of these unique creations. Sometimes we call them our babies. We're passionate about them. And so we want to have these beautiful memories associated with the work that we love. So I think that all goes together. One of the things that I can do to set myself up for some success in this way is, if I know, let's say, so one of my favorite places is White Sands National Park. It's these gorgeous, I have a collection of images on my website, but it's a gorgeous field in New Mexico. Is it called a field? Dune field? Probably. Of gypsum, white, soft gypsum dunes. And they're incredible. And if I go there and I find myself a little tense, a little uptight. Maybe I've been traveling. I can feel my shoulders. Maybe I've been in a hurry to get there. And to be honest, even if I'm in a hurry, I actually just take a few minutes, and a lot of times I'm alone when I'm there. I take a few minutes to just clear. And that's what you just talked about, Len. And we can do this process over time, or I can do it as I walk out to the dunes. And there's ways you can think on purpose. And like you said, Len, giving yourself permission to put all of the stress and the worry and the time constraints and all of those things aside if you don't need to have them, so that you can have this beautiful experience creating your art.
Magical, absolutely magical. I know for me, I create my best work when I'm in flow, but when I go into flow, it doesn't necessarily mean I make great work, but I'm on the edge of making great work, and that's why it's so addictive. And as you said, there's so many reasons behind that. Well, that's fantastic, isn't it, Brie? I think that's been an incredibly inspiring conversation that we've just had. I feel inspired, and now I'm thinking about how do I create more time in my life to go and try and find this flow state more often, because I think over the last few years it's been very hard to get away, and it's something that I'm really, really looking forward to doing, and getting back into my flow state. And of course, finding it home has been actually an incredible place for many artists I know as well, but that's a whole different story. I really love sharing these thoughts with you and our listeners. And as you know, I run Lens School and I publish Lens Journal, and the links are in our notes. And of course, there's links to all other things that we mention and to the videos. But just before we close up, I do have a question for our listeners. Have you experienced flow? What was it like for you? And I think the most important one is how do you set yourself up for it, and explore that, and make sure that you get there as often as possible. And we hope we've introduced a flow to you. I know we haven't explained it in depth. We can't do that in such a short period of time, but we do encourage you to go and explore that further and see what it is. Please keep the conversation going with us, and you can email us if you like at creativeaffairpodcast.com. You can comment on our Instagram posts if you like, and please talk to us, or even our individual ones, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we love chatting with listeners about all of these different topics and hearing how our conversations have influenced you or inspired you in any way. So, and for me as a coach for creatives, I help artists like you finally achieve goals in your art, business, and personal lives with less stress and tons more fun. Like, I think that flow state is tons more fun. So if you have less stress, then you will have more fun. So you can go to my website, creativemindscoach.com, and guess what? You can sign up for a free 30-minute coaching session with me, and you can see what's holding you back from achieving your creative dreams. I love helping people move past places where they're stuck so they can really keep their artistic passions flowing. It's fabulous. So before we go, we just want to say thank you to everyone who's reached out and engaged with us and shared our conversations with other creatives. Thank you so much. And we would really appreciate if you followed us on Instagram, if you can share any of the podcast episodes with anyone that you think would benefit by hearing them. So, because we'd love to reach a ton more artists. Season 2 to come. We're so excited. Well, Len, I know that you'll be keeping the romance alive at all of your wonderful artistic passions. Len just showed me some projects he's working on, and I'm so excited to see those come to life. So we hope that you guys are everyone out there is doing the same. So until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.